got going on?
We're doing a music video.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's what's up.
You want to be in it? You want to tell me something real quick?
Yeah. What kind of music video
Tell me-
you doing?
We're doing about Belzona. Tell me what Belzona's like.
Well, Belzona is a place you want to come here, man. This really like a retirement home place, but it's a wonderful community here, man, and low on crime.
That's Mike. I was driving around the Mississippi Delta one day, just kind of looking around, and he flagged us down. We were in Belzona, one of the poorest parts of the Delta, and just marveling at how abandoned and poor the place looked. By then, nothing really shocked us. This was perhaps the fourth day I had spent in rural Mississippi, documenting the decline of the region. But it wasn't until that afternoon in Belzona that it kind of sunk in, though. Despite the poverty and the setbacks, and there's really nothing here that's getting better, a lot of the people here are sort of upbeat and positive. I think they kind of like it here. And that really surprised me. If you travel throughout the U.S., you'll see a growing number of our communities that are suffering from decades of economic decline. Many of our inner cities are crumbling. Entire neighborhoods are being abandoned. But this is on another level. We're in the Mississippi Delta, the poorest corner in the poorest state in America. This is where the decline of the United States is the most dreadful. In the words of William Faulkner, to understand the world, you must first understand a place like Mississippi. Now, I don't know what he meant when he said those words, but I'm going to guess it had something to do with the condition of the place back then. William Faulkner spent his days in Mississippi back in the early 1900s. That was when Mississippi began to embody all the problems we see in the world right now. Extreme economic disparity, racial tensions, the reality of how fast the world can change. Mississippi's setbacks then represented what we see in the nation now. And all these themes are only magnified here these days. It looks like another country, doesn't it? Maybe not third world, but 2 3/4 world. Nope, this is here. This is America. It was day 12 on my southern adventure, and up to this point, I had seen a lot of bad things, but nothing like what I saw in Mississippi. As soon as you cross into this state, it really hits home. The Mississippi Delta is a region that's along the Mississippi River on the western side of the state. It's pretty large. The whole area is bigger than Connecticut. There really isn't a lot of diverse scenery here. It's flat, boring, and very hot and humid. Driving around, it's all dusty, empty stretches of bad roads and a lot of farmland. And sprinkled between all of this are really poor, small towns. Some call it the most southern place on earth. Others call it America's Ethiopia. I crisscrossed back and forth across the Delta for 5 days when I was down here in the spring of 2023. Along the way, I stopped in just about every small town I came to. I looked at all the decay of the downtowns and drove through neighborhoods that are far, far behind the times. Just about every place here looks like it's been spiraling downwards since the mid-1900s. And as far as I know, there's nothing being done to turn things around. Being so close to the river, the soil here is spectacular. I mean, you ask people here what makes this place so special, and they'll tell you, it's the dirt. In the old days, the cotton fields made a lot of people down here a lot of money. Well, not a lot of people. Most of them were rich white farmers. But times were good in this area back then for a lot of folks. However, as you know, the Civil War ruined a lot of this, so a lot of people left. Then, in the late 1800s, black landowners were disenfranchised. And things only got worse in the Delta, as a lot of the plantations here began using mechanization. Every tractor that came in here replaced 8 families. So, even more people went up north for work. I mean, they had lost all their land, and their careers too. It wasn't until the 1960s, during the Civil Rights Movement, that blacks in the South were treated sort of equally. But by then, a lot of this area was already far behind. And what's here now is all pretty bleak. It's basically one of the most miserable looking places you've ever seen. It's pretty clear there's not a lot of jobs for people down here. That's their biggest problem down here now. There just aren't very many companies opening up here that pay very well. And technology's pretty much wiped out most of the farming jobs. Even the catfish farms had provided some jobs, but China's beating Mississippi at producing cheaper catfish now. I know! Mississippi getting beaten at catfishing by the Chinese. Right now we're in Belzona, which is, or was, the catfish capital of the world. The population here is less than 2,000 people today, which is about half of what it was 50 years ago. And the decline's accelerating. This place has lost a third of its population in the last 20 years alone. About 40% of folks are on welfare here. The average person here earns a little bit more than $1,000 a month. A lot of the homes are falling down now or in serious need of repair. Downtown Belzona used to have some sort of life, but I think there's only a couple places that are still open now. They say the downtown square is where communities gather and thrive. There's not a lot of that here anymore. All of this is in the middle of the Delta, surrounded by farmland and hour in every direction. The nearest big city is the capital of Jackson, which is 70 miles away. So there doesn't seem to be a future here. It was here in Belzona where we met Mike, the guy who stopped us when we were looking around.
And you got plenty of people that have invested in the community, a lot of businesses, and it's just a wonderful place. I grew up around on these streets here, and it's a nice place to be. My name is Michael, and that's all I can say. Catfish capital of the world, bro.
Thanks, Michael.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, man.
See you.
Y'all have a good day.
All right.
All right.
Mike seems to be upbeat in a world literally crumbling around him. I admired that. I'd see some more of that as I explored the region more later in the week. This is Shaw, Mississippi. It's about an hour north of Belzona, and there's nothing between the two except for miles and miles of farms. There were only 1,400 people left here when I visited, but there's probably fewer people here by the time you watch this. They've lost a quarter of their population in the last decade alone. This place is even poorer than the first place we stopped at. Entire families bring in less than $20,000 a year. I think the average person in Shaw earns about $900 a month. Half of Shaw lives off of government assistance alone. Entire schools are closed here, something I saw all over the Delta. There's just no reason to keep these places open since the population's shrinking so fast. And they can't get any teachers to come work in the Delta. Not many young, eager teachers want to come down here and earn low salaries and live like this. Can't blame them. School's gone. The state ranks 5th in dropout rates at 8%. Schools just don't have a lot of money. They just try to do the best they can to get the kids off to college and hope they never have to come back. But nothing's really changed down here. It's always been like this with education. And Mississippi ranks first in teenage pregnancies. A lot of the country is slowing down with having kids, but not here. Downtown Shaw looks just like any other has-been Delta community. The entire 3-block stretch of this downtown's just gutted. Outside of a couple nonprofits, I don't think I saw a single business open anymore. It all looks like something you'd expect to see in third world Caribbean. You might remember when I drove through Appalachia this winter. In Appalachia, it was a lot of poor white people who dealt with the coal crash. Down here, it's mostly poor black people who have gone through an agriculture crash. Here in Shaw, it's 95% African American. Appalachia and the Deep South actually have a lot in common. They both care deeply about religion and vote by the color of their skin. As a whole, the state of Mississippi is in really bad shape. What we're looking at right now is the extreme version of that, but statewide, things are not pretty. There's kind of a joke here now. Mississippi's first on every bad list and last on every good list. It's all the categories. They're unhealthy, the education's far behind, and there is lots and lots of poverty. 20% of the entire state's on welfare now, and that's double the U.S. average. There just aren't a lot of healthy food options down here. Since there aren't very many conventional grocery stores, a lot of people live on fast food, and a lot of the kids survive on chips and soda. Where we are now is in Leland, Mississippi, a teeny little place in the middle of nowhere with 4,800 people. Homes here average $59,000, but then you turn a corner and most of the houses you see are closer to $10,000. I bet you could get something to rent here for $200 a month. Maybe they should market themselves as the retirement capital of the South. Promote land sales to seniors that want to get out of the big cities for some peace and quiet. I'm not kidding. You see towns like this every 20 minutes driving around the Delta. Here's a place I saw driving around that I couldn't record because the camera died. There's a lot of opportunity, I guess. Somebody just needs to come down here with some money and snag all this up. There is a lot of room. This isn't just in the Bible Belt, it's the damn buckle. So it's really surprising when you see churches burned out and left behind. Or maybe not. Half the state is Baptist. There's 4 times more Baptists here than anywhere else in the country. 80% of people in Mississippi say they're highly religious. I mean, religion's how a lot of these people cope. A lot of people are told to pray and good things will happen and their fortunes will change. There's a lot of whatever may come will come around here.
What if they replace our Bibles with math and science books? Would that help?
Mappy, that was probably the most insensitive thing you've ever said. Just because you think you know it all.
Just asking.
Stop asking. We take for granted things like decent jobs, good schools, Wi-Fi, public transportation, reliable sewers, grocery stores, and medical insurance. They don't have a lot of that down here. Nuh-uh. One guy told a newspaper reporter, "I'm trying to move my family. I'd rather live in a doghouse than here." Damn. I'm not just picking on Mississippi, although this is an extreme example of how bad things are in the Deep South. I mean, here's a look at the most miserable states. They're all right around here. It's the Bible Belt, the divorce belt, the murder belt, the smoking belt, and the low life expectancy belt. It's just crazy how much the health fortunes have changed here. Back in the 1960s, a lot of kids here were so malnourished that they had distended bellies. Now, it's the fattest region in the nation. It's a lot of diabetes. It's a lot of gas station chicken gizzards, Skol, fast food, and double whiskey and Red Bulls. They call Mound Bayou the jewel of the Delta, if you can believe it. Maybe at one time it was. I didn't see anything down here that's a shining example of how life should be. The population here is 1,500, down from a quarter in the last 2 decades. Despite all of this, these two seem to like it here.
Ain't too much to change, you know. It's just that it ain't many people in here as it used to be, but it's still the Delta. It's all right. I wouldn't go nowhere else.
Yeah, it's nice. We've been here all our life, so it's good. Everybody know everybody, you know, and some conflicts every now and then, but other than that, everybody get along pretty good. Yeah.
We travel a lot. I go to a lot of big cities, and I see all the problems in the big cities.
Yeah, I don't like the big cities. I don't. I've been there. I'm a truck driver, so I go all over. So I'd rather stay right here. Yeah, it's comfortable. Yeah.
How important is religion to people out here? I see churches.
Oh yeah, they pretty real religious. They go to churches. It's a lot of church going people. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What do people do for fun out here?
Well, we have baseball, football, basketball games. You know, they just sandlock. You know, they do that. There's a place over there where basketball court. Mm-hmm. They have the games. They do that.
Again, more people I talked to on the side of the highway that expressed optimism despite everything you're seeing now. That kind of says a lot about the mentality down here. I don't know if it's a defeatist mentality or they're just content, but that's how they feel. We saw lots of smiles and waves when we were down here. Some people seemed outright cheery. Everybody still has land, a home, a couple of guns, a couple cars, a haircut, food on the table, booze, and a new pair of shoes. Maybe that's all they need. This is author Hank Burdine. He's an expert on the Delta. I spent some time with him one evening, and one of the questions I asked him was, Hank, I travel a lot. I see a lot of poor places. It's only down here that everybody seems so happy. Why is that?
And there are not many places you can't go, whomever you are in the Delta, that you don't know somebody from that town. If you get into trouble, you make one call, somebody makes a call, then everybody comes to help you. That's what the Delta's about.
So a lot of this might look bad and scary for outsiders, but it doesn't feel threatening or anything. It's not particularly dangerous in the Delta. These towns are just so small that it's hard to get away with anything. I'm sure thefts and robberies are a thing, though. This is downtown Yazoo City. There's a few signs of life, but not much. The Mississippi Delta has been very political. John F. Kennedy came down here and toured the area in the 60s, and what he saw made him literally cry. The poverty and filth was something he hadn't seen before. He said it was worse than a third world country. He didn't have any time to help, though, because he was assassinated shortly after coming down here. They fight over funding here all the time. The state turns down federal dollars because they don't want to be beholden to Washington. They even turn away programs that would help school kids and give people decent health care. The current governor here, Tate Reeves, has sent back hundreds of millions of dollars in welfare and rental assistance money because he calls them liberal handouts that encourage people to stay out of the workforce. He might be onto something, though. The Black author Thomas Sewell once said that government policies created cultures of dependency on government and that welfare creates stagnation. We have an overly generous welfare state that has lulled poor blacks into a permanent state of dependency and sloth, he said. In case you're wondering, almost the entire state votes heavy red. But not here. Jackson and Biloxi and the Mississippi Delta are the state's Democratic strongholds.
Well, there are, it's not only a higher upper echelon and a lower poverty line. It's everybody in between. Now, there's also a big welfare situation here, which I don't think is too sporty, because I have seen where some people take advantage of that. And that's not good for the community. That's not good for the people that are doing that. And it's not good for the government. You've got this ADC, aid for dependent children. I've seen some families on porches where you had 3 generations of welfare recipients. And if you got 2 babies, and if you had 4 babies, you get 4 times as much money. That ain't right. And a lot of them have different baby daddies. And I don't think that is the way it's supposed to be. I don't think that's the way the system was designed for it to be. But that may be the way that some people are taking advantage of that system. Now, I don't have a dog in that fight other than I pay my taxes. But I've seen that. And I don't think that's good for society.
I think there's a lot of people mooching off the system here. But there's a lot of people here who just plain need government help to survive. It's not like they're not working just to not work. There aren't really a lot of good jobs. But then you ask people, why don't you just leave? And they'll say, this is my home. My friends and family and church are all here. I'm not going anywhere. The money thing down here gets really complicated. A lot of the money that does make its way into the community usually goes to the big farming corporations. And they don't even employ the locals anymore. It's hard to find local workers for whatever farms are left. People here don't want to do it or can't do it. A lot of the farms down here are bringing in workers from South Africa. They're the only ones that'll come down here and do the work. And they're the only ones who can do it. Anyways, there's a big disparity between the haves and have-nots down here. In the 1800s, there were more millionaires per capita here than anywhere else. Now there's more broke people per capita than anywhere else. A lot of people have heard of Shelby, Mississippi. They're down to 2,000 people here now. And I saw a lot of abandonment here. It's all over the place. Their downtown is pretty much gutted at this point. One reason folks down here are so unhealthy is there just aren't a lot of hospitals left anymore. More than half the hospitals in rural Mississippi are on the verge of collapse. They're going to shut them down because the people who live here can't afford to pay the bills. And if you don't pay your bill, the hospital doesn't make any money. At this hospital right here, they're threatening to cut off the maternity care unit. Mississippi already has the nation's highest fetal mortality rate and the highest infant mortality rate, and the highest number of babies born preterm, and the highest number of moms that die giving birth. My God. But how can the hospitals stay open? They're a business too. Now, Clarksdale's a bit of a bright spot down here. Sorta. This is where I stayed on one of the nights I was in town. It's a fairly large city for Delta standards. There's 14,000 people in town now, but it's lost 30% of its population in the last 20 years. One day, it might be just as small as the towns we saw earlier. There's much more culture here in Clarksdale and more money here because it's sort of a touristy spot. This is widely known as the home of the blues. They host the Delta Juke Joint Festival here every year. I took in a show one night when I was in town and listened to blues legend Watermelon Slim.
Get out my life, woman. You don't love me no more.
However, even though Clarksdale's sort of hanging on, it's very bleak. It's just sort of a little bit better than the other Delta communities I saw. Cleveland is supposed to be the nicest place in the Delta, so I drove through Cleveland one afternoon to see what they considered nice. Downtown looks pretty empty, but much more inviting than most of the rest of the Delta, I have to say. There's under 12,000 people in Cleveland, and they've lost 30% of their population in the last 25 years. So I don't know how much it's thriving. However, people earn closer to $2,000 a month in incomes here, which is far more than most of the other towns I saw. It's just amazing that $25K a year is considered good. Another little town I saw that has some fairly nice in some parts is Little Leland. There were some pretty decent homes here that I hadn't seen on my Delta Drive. I looked it up, and these houses are worth anywhere between $95,000 and $350,000. I know, right? And it's right along a little river, too. Seems like a bargain to me if you have low expectations for life. But nice, beautiful homes. And then there's Greenville. It's the biggest city down here, with about 28,000 people. But it is not pleasant, nor is it thriving. Parts of Greenville are just one big giant hood. There's no other way to put it. Just about every Delta town I drove through seemed pretty low-key. Just poverty and abandonment. They didn't feel on edge. Not here. Nuh-uh. The whole place feels sketch. Cell phone service is terrible. There aren't any decent hotels, and there's nowhere to eat. I actually got lost here for the first and only time on the entire month-long journey, and I had to flag a cop down to figure out how to get the hell out of town. There's closed down factories all over the Delta. Here in Greenville, there was a Fruit of the Loom plant and a Schwinn factory. They're long gone. Greenville once had more literary writers per capita. Not anymore, they don't. There were once a lot of mining and shipping and agriculture jobs here. But President Carter's grain embargo shut a lot of that down. So you can really see how political decisions can impact communities. Before I left Greenville, I stopped at a Subway to get something to eat. It was really the only option that wasn't fast food. Inside, I saw a woman who works for FEMA buzzing away on her laptop, catching up on work. I asked her, "Is there a disaster nearby?" And she just kind of looked at me and sighed. I think the whole area is a disaster, to be honest. So whose fault is this? The government's fault for not doing anything? or the people's fault for not doing anything. Yeah, it's up to them to do their part to change, but a lot of this would be avoidable if we'd stop blowing dough all over the place and make it so appealing for our largest companies to just leave. Part of the problem is Mississippians just don't want to change. It's a very deep, strange, complicated place with an ugly past that still influences the culture and way of life. A lot of these folks will just keep plugging along. A lot of them will stay proud and generous and very kind. There's a lot of problems here, but there's no problem in Mississippi that's not in every other state. They're just magnified here, and Mississippi's bad at hiding them. Driving around here on my last day, I wondered, are these people fading away from us, or are we fading away from them? Now I'm going to show the rest of the interview with Hank Burdine. He's a Mississippi Delta legend and the author of Dust in the Road, Recollections of a Delta Boy. Hank and I sat down and talked in the shade on the grounds of the Belmont Plantation, the last remaining plantation in the Mississippi Delta. The two of us had a pleasant conversation while we got eaten alive by early spring skeeters. Why is the Delta so special?
It's the dirt. It's the dirt from 41% of the continental United States and 2 provinces of Canada. It was a primeval hardwood bottomland swamp. You couldn't get in here. Until the 1800s, there really wasn't much clearing going on around here except along the river. And then the plantations began being formed, and the loggers came in, began logging the trees and opening up all this land to this cotton production. And you, because of that, then you had aristocratic families from Kentucky that came down, from South Carolina. These Kentucky folks right here at Belmont Plantation, you had Virginians come down. So in all of the big houses, they loaded their music rooms up with grand pianos and harpsichords, cellos, violins, and stocked their libraries with literature from all over the world. And from that came the artistic, cultural, and literary explosion that came right here. And Greenville, Mississippi was at one time known to have more writers per capita than anywhere else in America because of the William Alexander Percy influence with the Shelby Foots, the Walker Percys, the Harding Carters, all these people that came in visiting with him, and that just emanated through the Delta. So the Delta is more of a unique state of mind than anything else. It's got some of the most productive farmland in the world. It has been said that Deer Creek, which is about 4 miles from here, the Lord could have made better dirt than Deer Creek, but he figured he just didn't need to. So it's a unique place. Not a lot of industry here, all agricultural. The Mississippi River right there, at one time, Greenville was known as the towboat capital of the world. We had 38 different towing companies here in Greenville. The river right through Greenville on Lake Ferguson was known as the $1 Million Mile, and tremendous industry there. But after the President Carter days and the grain embargo, most of those industries shut down and moved up to Paducah, Kentucky. We still have a couple of towing companies and shipbuilding places on the lake now. But the situation in the Delta now, we've got a great ecotourism business being built back on the blues. You got Clarksdale, which is based on the blues, and it's making a very strong resurgence. Greenwood had a real big kick when Viking came in there and started all of its industries. Indianola has the B.B. King Museum. Cleveland has the Grammy Museum and Dockery Plantation, which is supposed to be the birthplace of the blues. That's where Charlie Patton came from. So the blues resurgence is really coming back strong around here.
A lot of stuff is left. Agriculture, manufacturing. The Delta is known not for being one of the richest areas, it's one of the poorest now. What's happened here that the challenges of this area?
The challenges back during the days after the Civil War was to be able to continue to plant cotton and grow cotton with a very limited labor supply. And what happened there, as this rich soil was being cleared, the timber was being cut, they got into a system called sharecropping, where a family could look after about 26, 28 acres of land. Had a house on there, and he was given unlimited credit at the company store, where he could get all the food he wanted and everything like that, the clothes, the boots and everything. He was supplied with a mule. He was supplied with the implements and the seed to grow the cotton. And he was responsible for growing about 20-something acres of cotton, he and his family. And out of, when the cotton was picked, out of that, the indebtedness that was at the store came out of his share. The landowner kept his share, and whatever was left over went to the sharecropper. Now, at that time, some of those systems could have been manipulated in a wrong way, but there were very, very few instances of that. Most of the people knew that they had to keep good labor and good workers on the farm, so they treated them fairly and they treated them properly, and that was the only system that could happen until the mechanization came along, where the tractors came along. And at Hobson Plantation in Clarksdale, Mississippi, where the Shack Up Inn is, that was the first plantation to totally mechanize, to go from sharecropping with mules to paid farm labor on tractors. And for every tractor that hit that place, it took out 8 families off of that farm, because that one tractor could do the work of 8 families. So that was the beginning of the northward migration of labor out of the Mississippi Delta. And it's always been a disparity of racial population, more black population than white population. And if it was that the majority of the white population owned the land and the businesses, and the black population did all the work, whether that was really true or not, I can't really say, other than it possibly was. But we have some tremendous black entrepreneurs here. They have been able to build stores, build businesses, and the Delta never really had, other than in a couple of instances, had a major racial problem. One thing being, because of that, Senator Leroy Percy made it a fact, and made it one of his most important things, was to keep the Ku Klux Klan out of the Delta. Now, there may have been an ulterior motive in that, because had the Klan made a strong position in the Delta, it may have run a lot of the labor off of the farms. So for whatever reason, the Klan was kept out of the Delta to a large degree, as opposed to the way it was over in what we call the hills, simply because they just would not allow them in here. So today we've got I don't say a racial situation, because of what I saw this last week in Rolling Fork, Mississippi, when the tornado came and hit. It was the tornado hit about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. I got a call at 8:30 from a friend of mine in Arkansas, and he did a tour of duty in Afghanistan. He said, "Uncle Hank, me and 20 other guys are on the way to Rolling Fork." I said, "Man," I said, "I don't know what you're going to see." He said, "We don't care what we're going to find. We're on the way." He called me at 10:30. They were already on the ground, dodging electric lines, literally pulling people from under houses and out of trees. And he says, I spent 4 years in Afghanistan. I've never seen anything like I'm looking at right now. By daylight that next morning, the Cajun Navy had come out of Louisiana. They didn't bring their boats. They brought chainsaws, boots, and gloves, and food, and started cooking and started cleaning. By noontime, the day after the tornado hit the night before, there were countless track hoes, backhoes, chainsaws, crews of men from local farmers and local Louisiana people that came over, Arkansas people that came over, that hit the ground running. This is a 90% black community. Everybody pitched in to help everybody else. There was no black-white issue at all. The regional director of FEMA stated that she has been to a lot of disasters, but she'd never seen anything like this, where 90% of the population was minority, half of that was under the poverty line, yet the majority of the people in there that brought equipment, that were doing the work, were white. Now, that chokes me up when I think of that, and I saw it. I cooked 8 pork butts, took them over there to feed folks, and everybody, you had free food stands everywhere. Right now, we've got 1,000 people, volunteers in here from all over this country, helping out, doing whatever they can to help out. I have not seen a Black Lives Matter tent where they're doing anything. Maybe they are, I just hadn't seen it. What I've seen, it doesn't matter about the race. If people around here are in trouble, these people, whomever they are coming to help. And that's what we're seeing. One good thing to come out of that horrendous disaster is what I saw of humanity. Black and white brothers and sisters. Let's jump in on this monkey and let's get the job done, and that's what they're doing.
From the outsider standpoint, people would be like, why would people want to live in an area where there's no jobs, where the schools are shutting down, where there's poverty? But they seem to just be happy here.
They're happy here, and it all goes back to the dirt, man. It's the dirt. You know, it's something about this place that a lot of people left. But once they have gone, then they want to come back. And when they retire, they want to come back. And simply because of the aura, so to speak, of what the place is and what it's about. It's that big river right over there, too. That's a bad son of a gun right yonder. I know a lot about the river. I respect the river. It's a highly religious area, Bible Belt, so to speak. The beauty of the Greenville area and Cleveland and Greenwood along with that is that we're such a cultural mix of people because of the folks coming in building the railroads, folks coming in building the levee. We have a tremendous Chinese population. We've got an Italian population that's unbelievable that came in here originally as subservient labor, so to speak, to help sharecrop and all like this. That didn't work, and a lot of them didn't go back to Italy. They stayed. And we've got an Italian population that's unreal. We've got Lebanese in here. We've got the Jewish community in here. And it's all a melting pot. And the blacks that are here and the different religions within all of that, everybody gets along. You've got other deals that go on. Where do you find the farm labor now to run these tractors? A lot of areas are having to bring in folks from South Africa on work visa programs. Well, why don't you just hire labor from right here? We used to have that labor. Now we don't. And you have to have a certain type of person that's running these tractors, because you got a $400,000-$500,000 tractor that's run off of computers and it's run off a GPS surveillance system. And you've got to have the capacity to know how to integrate all of those different systems to work this equipment. And right now, a lot of the labor force on some of the labor force on these farms are from South Africa. They are educated enough to be able to know how to run those systems and to learn once they get here right away to get on those tractors and operate operate the equipment during all this farm. And they'll stay until November right after harvest, and then they go back to South Africa.
What do you think the future of the Delta is going to be in 50 years? What do you think this place is going to look like?
In 50 years.
Yeah.
I remember what it was 50 years ago. I don't know how we can get more advanced technology-wise, but I know it's coming. And I know there's going to be a time when that tractor out there does not have a man on it, that it'll all be run by GPS.
So then what are all the people going to do?
That's what I don't know.
What jobs? I mean, a lot of these cities are crumbling. We drove through them, and I haven't seen half of them yet. I can't imagine in 50 years what they're going to look like when they're barely holding on now.
That's true. And a lot of these little Delta towns, like my little town of Glen Allen, it used to have a clinic there, it used to have a picture show there, it used to have 2 grocery stores there. It don't have anything now. Those were the little communities where the farm people would come, get their stuff, and go out. We got a big medical deal coming in Rouville that's continuing to grow there. I think we're still going to have the ecotourism that's coming, Clarksdale areas and such as that. We've got a big boost in ecotourism in Greenville right now. Viking cruise lines is coming up here now on the Mississippi River, bringing in a lot of people to tour around the Delta and do all that. What it's going to be like in 50 years, I don't know. It scares me. Now, I do know that on a normal good-sized farm that could take care of a family, 500-acre farm back 50, 60 years ago was a good-sized little place. You had some 1,000-acre, 2,000-acre places. Sometimes you had bigger than that. Today, if you're not farming at least 4,000 acres, you're not farming. You're getting by, because that is the break-even point with the amount of equipment. Even though the equipment, you don't have to have 15 tractors, you only have 4 tractors. Well, each one of them tractors costs $500,000. Cotton picker costs $1 million. You use it 3 weeks out of the year. So technology is going to take over. There's nothing going to happen to the dirt. The dirt's still going to be here, and the dirt's going to provide.
Are you looking to move and need advice? I do consulting. That's right. I'll sit down and talk about where the next perfect place for you and your family should be. I do it all the time. Together, let's find you a new home that's safe and checks all your boxes. And I can also help you find your new house, too. Email me and I'll work with you on not just helping you figure out where to move, but I can help you find your perfect home, too. That's right. I know awesome, reliable agents all over the country, and I'd love to connect you to somebody who can help you search for that perfect home. Hey guys, if you learned something new about America or what it's like to live in America, great. You should think about subscribing and turning on your notifications. You can also click one of these videos or playlists for more.
This is Sage, Nick's manager. This has been a Corner House Entertainment production.